we all do.
This is Tom Daly and Pete Ray interviewing Bill Clontz. And Bill, let's start by asking your full name.
William Ralph Clontz.
Okay. And where were you born?
I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And how old are you?
I'm 75 last December. Born deep
Congratulations.
in the last century here.
All right. What brought you to this place?
It's kind of an interesting short story. We were visiting friends in Asheville many years ago, about 15 years ago. Just got taken with the place, as everyone does. And with 4 other couples, bought a condo downtown. And so we were spending about 3 months a year here, just for vacation. And finally decided, why am I driving 9 hours back to Washington every few weeks? Everything I was still working at the time, I could do here. And a friend told us about Deerfield. We took one look around and thought, we were actually going to look for another house and move. We thought, let's just skip a step and go right there.
Right.
That's how we wound up here.
Yeah.
Perfect place.
Yeah. Where else have you lived?
Oh, gosh. You don't have that much film. This is our 26th move.
26 moves.
Yeah, we were in the Army for 30
Okay,
years.
just name some of the places.
Yeah,
Not a lot of detail.
North Carolina, Texas, Alabama, California, France, a couple tours in Vietnam, and in between we traveled just about everywhere you could imagine. We've literally visited every state but one, I think. I can't remember which one it is now, but we've literally been all over the country. We've lived in a luxurious whole floor apartment in the fashion district of Paris. We've lived in a mobile home in a dirt road in Texas, and about everything in between.
What is the earliest ancestor that you know about?
Oh my goodness! I suppose he'd be a great grandfather. I know he had a minor role in the Revolutionary War. That's about as far back as I go. Family history is really a bit thin on my side. I have a niece. This is really her passion in life. She knows people I never even thought of here. But.
Yeah. And where and when did they live?
Oh well, they would have been in North Carolina in the 1700s. I think in the western part of the state here, actually, as opposed to Charlotte, which is where I come from.
Okay. Tell me about your parents.
Nice people, my parents. They were both rural background. My father was raised in western North Carolina, my mother in central South Carolina. Good, simple, working class folks from an earlier generation. My father graduated from a high school. My mother didn't actually do that. But both just good, solid, working class people.
What did they do for a living?
My father managed a grocery store. He died when I was very young. I was 7 years old when he passed away, but he was in the grocery business prior to that. And my mother had a number of jobs. She worked in a movie theater as a ticket person for a while. She worked in a school dining room for a bit. Whatever she needed to do to make money, that's what she did.
Tell me about the building that you grew up in, that you lived in as a boy.
It's an interesting question. My early aspiration was to be an architect, so I took an interest in buildings. My childhood was in what seemed like a perfectly normal house. 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. It was probably about 900 square feet, I suppose. We grew up in Charlotte, which was a growing city at that time, nowhere near as large as it is now. And that was most of my childhood was very localized. I really stayed pretty much in the Charlotte area growing up. Since then, of course, I've had the privilege of traveling everywhere and seeing just amazing architecture.
Did you live in one home growing up?
I did, yeah, that's right, the whole time until I joined the Army coming out of high school, and until then, lived in the same place, yeah.
Can you describe the neighborhood or community that you grew up in?
Yeah.
And what were the gathering places?
An interesting story as well. We lived in a neighborhood called Dilworth, which back in the 1920s was a very up-and-coming sort of place here. It was kind of like North Asheville is these days. By the time I grew up, it was just a standard working-class neighborhood. The thing that made it most interesting is literally 4 doors down from me was a AAA ballpark for a Minnesota farm team. So if you ever saw Field of Dreams, that was my childhood. I was a bat boy for a bit. My earliest and primary memories with my father were going to ball games on weekends, that sort of stuff. So the ballpark was really the gathering place. supermarkets didn't really exist back in that era, so we had a neighborhood grocery store everybody went to. It's long gone. We all had a neighborhood pharmacy that's still there. People still gather. Your neighbors, of course, that sort of stuff. So, a very low key, easy. You could walk to everywhere. So, imagine Mayberry with a little more urban touch. That's about what it felt like.
What schools did you go to, and who was your favorite teacher?
Oh my goodness. Start on the early end here. I went to Dilworth Elementary School, and I still remember, as many of us do, an early teacher. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Orr, Harriet Orr, still remember well. Just a model of a good teacher. She was very good. I didn't understand at the time, but later I came to understand her real skill was reading each student and knowing what they needed to do better. Some needed encouragement, some needed discipline, some just needed to be left alone.
And what did you need?
I was pretty much, leave me alone. I'm okay. I got this. I'll ask for help if I need it. But she was very encouraging growing up and just made me comfortable with school growing up. So I went to all the public schools in Charlotte growing up. Higher education was an interesting picture. As I said, I joined the Army right out of high school. I call it my Hemingway period. I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I really didn't have enough money for college. My grades weren't good enough. My athletics weren't good enough. So I thought, I'll go do this for 3 years. There was a war going on. Go test myself a little bit, qualify for the GI Bill, and then get on with my life. Right after I joined, I got recruited for officer candidate school. During that period, I did a lot of night schools and weekends. I got 2 years of college, and then the Army said, give us 4 more years and we'll give you 2 years off to go get your bachelor's. So I did that at a little place called the Monterey Institute of International Studies out in Monterey, California. It's now part of Middlebury College. Wonderful place. Favorite instructor there was Professor Garrett. Average class size was 12 to 14. It was just a terrific experience. Nobody could hide. I mean, it was a place to ask some good questions and do the conversation. Graduate school, I went to Central Michigan University. Hawaii campus while I was working in Hawaii out there. And then a couple odds and ends. I did a fellowship at Harvard for 1 year. I was an Army fellow out there for that year. And I did a 1-year fellowship at the Brookings Institution some years ago. In spite of all that, I'm still dumb as a rock, but I've had a lot of good experience.
Yeah. How do or did you or your family celebrate holidays?
Oh, yeah. I don't think anything extraordinary. Probably the thing that comes to mind when you mention that, Christmas was always, and Thanksgiving were always large family events. My mother had a large family. She had 5 brothers and sisters, and none of them lived very far away. So generally, we would rotate where we'd go, but all the families would get together. At the end of the holiday, we're all exhausted. Thought that was enough fun. Maybe next year, we'll do that.
Excuse me. Any favorite memories?
Gosh, not that I can think of. Probably, if I was trying to nail something down, my grandmother lived on a working farm in South Carolina when I was growing up. Those were always the best holiday periods, I think. We would all go down to the farm. Everybody had a job. Got it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, got it. Everybody had a different job. I, as the small kid for most of the time, had the job of kindling the fire in the morning. This was literally an old-fashioned farmhouse with no central heat. It was just heated with fireplaces. So my job was to get up about 4:30 or 5, get a little kindling, get the first fireplace started, and then all the adults would come wrapped up and get dressed under the blanket. And you go out and milk a cow if you wanted milk for breakfast. If you wanted chicken for lunch, you'd sick a dog on, and the dog would
get yourself a chicken.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, that was it. But good childhood memories. Sometimes a lot of kids probably don't get much hands-on time in an environment like that now. Just terrific. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Okay. Tell me about your marriage.
Well, by the way, let me introduce Bonnie, the border collie.
Yeah.
She'll come around and check out and then just
Sure.
go do her thing here.
She's blind, but her nose is good, right?
That's right. Well, deaf, yeah.
Okay.
Interesting, getting ready to go. She's starting to grow a cataract here, but they say it's very slow. So we just found out yesterday we don't have to do the surgery at this point. So that's good. Marriage. Standard joke we tell. Meg and I met in the 6th grade. but we didn't rush things. We didn't start dating until the 7th grade.
Okay.
So we literally raised each other, and we tell people aging together is a piece of cake. If you went through puberty together, aging is not so very hard to do.
Okay.
So we've been married over 50 years now. She, we got married. 3 months later, I left for Vietnam. Was gone for a year.
Wow.
Came back for about a year and a quarter. Left for another year, and then came back. So she really got tested earlier herself, but did just fine.
Yeah.
By the time I retired from the Army, my last job, I commanded a brigade in the 82nd Airborne, which means she had about 2,000 families that looked to her. If we deployed somewhere, somebody had a problem and got in trouble, she was the first one they called her. So
Yeah.
it's been a real partnership all the way through.
Yeah.
I'm a lucky guy. I'm married up. What can I say?
All right, children? You have children?
No, we chose not to.
Okay.
You might remember I mentioned I was gone that first year, back for a year, gone for a year. Decided, boy, let's take a couple years to relax, and the rotations are over. And after 5 years, I forget which one of us said, "Tell me again why we were going to do kids." And we decided we just raised great dogs instead.
We're having too much fun without them.
That's right.
Yeah.
We got to a decision point early on that, and thought, gosh, who's the best kid we know? My niece. So I called my brother and said, "Can I borrow your daughter for a summer?" She was a great kid. We had a lot of fun. I mean, she still talks about the summer. We all had a lot of fun. We thought, no, I think we'll pass.
Okay.
So we decided to.
Was she the one of your extended family that you really kind of hung out with, or how'd that work?
Well, no, again, because early on we were always gone. We
Yeah,
were
okay.
somewhere
Okay.
else. Yeah,
Okay.
but whenever we could, we would get together with her. She came and visited us several summers and had a good time. She just retired herself as a librarian just about a month ago. Hey, sweetie.
Brothers and sisters?
Had two older brothers. Both of them have passed away in the last couple of years.
Okay.
I was one of those surprise babies. My mother was like
Okay.
42, 43 when they found out I was coming along here. So the brother that just above me, was just going into high school about the time I was born. And my oldest brother,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, my oldest brother already had his family established
Right.
by the time I came along here.
Right.
As I mentioned, my father died when I was 7, and my older brother, just really stepped up and filled that spotlight. Always included me with his family activities. We went camping together.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Come on, dog, over here. Let's not knock the camera over. Back in the old days, you might remember new cars all came out at the same time in September every
Oh,
year.
yeah.
I have great memories. My brother every September in the middle of the month would pick me up and his son, and we go to all the dealers.
Right.
They all knew we weren't going to buy one, but we wanted to smell the new cars. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
All right. Tell me, but if I was to, if I had known you when you were younger as a kid,
Yeah.
what would I have observed, or what were you like? I mean, what would I have said about you?
Interesting. I think the same thing you'd probably say now if you knew. I was always curious.
Ah, okay.
If I have one trait that I like in myself, I'm always curious about something, and I'm always assuming I might be on the right track, but I probably don't have the final answer yet.
Yeah.
So as a kid, I felt I was always interested in history, geography, politics. Figuring, there's probably more than one way to skin a cat. Keep looking,
Interesting.
and respect the people you disagree with.
Sounds like you were real open-minded.
I think so, yeah. But
Yeah.
we all think we are.
Yeah. Okay. What about friends? Were there some real special friends? You had a lot of friends, or what was that like?
Yeah, I probably mid-course, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I had good friends growing up. Generally, people I worked with. I had my first job when I was 12. Worked ever since, and so mainly people that I spent time with working,
Okay.
doing that.
Wow.
But no one best friend, that sort of thing.
Okay.
I'm a reasonable guy to get along with. I think so. I enjoy people passing.
Okay. All right. Are there family stories, things that you've heard? Maybe about your extended family or your grandparents or whatever. Are there stories that got repeated over and over again, or not?
Yeah, well, no, not really. You actually had sort of dig for that sort of thing in my family. Everybody was pretty quiet and didn't follow history very well. Let's see, one story that came out, about it's probably only 20, 30 years ago. One of my great uncles, I guess he was, who was thought to be a very important person in Camden, South Carolina area, turned out on the side ran a brothel and a bar during Prohibition.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, which I thought that's kind of admirable. Eh?
Right.
I like that. That one came out a bit here. Interesting enough, it's not really a story, but one of the impressions I have that just really made a big impression on me, as I mentioned, my father passed away early. I remember going to his funeral,
You do?
and at the at the end of the service, my mother reached in her purse and pulled out. She had 7 cents, and she said, "That's all we've got right now, but we're going to be okay." Very determined lady here, but even at the time, it didn't scare me. I just thought, she thinks we'll make it here. But that always stuck with me. Don't ever take anything for granted.
Right.
You don't know how many cards you're dealt or what the next one's going to be here. But
Yeah.
she just rolled with it and had a great life. I mean, she died in her mid-80s, but had a great run all the way up to the end here. Also a very curious person. I think where I probably got that from.
Uh-huh. She sounded like she was really responsible and,
Yeah.
and determined. And, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we all know our mothers are just the best people on the planet. But yeah, she had a lot of determination and a lot of gumption. Just was not a person easily defeated.
Yeah.
She just didn't let stuff get her down.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You said you started working when you were 12.
Yeah.
Give me a sense of those early jobs.
Yeah, I started at the grocery store where my father had worked.
Okay.
I worked a bit after school on the weekends there. Had paper routes
Okay.
all the way through. Got those. Started that when I was 12 as well. I had 2 jobs for a little while there. Got older, got a larger paper route, which is a good sort of thing. And then in high school, I went to work for Harris Teeter. Did several jobs for them. And, if I hadn't joined the Army, I probably would have stayed there. Would have probably been a store manager or something in the corporation there. But all of those things taught me a lot. I was really grateful. I think there's great value in a kid having a job early on. I didn't have as much time for social or for athletics and stuff, but boy, you pick up great habits. You get a little self-discipline, and you see the public in a way differently than you do when you're just passing people when there's a client inside.
Yeah.
I was grateful for the experience. I really was.
But an awful lot of kids would not have been working, but you did.
Yeah, I think probably more common during the era. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I had a number of friends who were working. I never resented it. I just thought it was a good, and I like being able to put something in the pot and
Yeah.
have a little money for myself here. I thought it was a good thing to do.
What did you ever in conflict with people, or what do you? I mean, what were your relationships like with work? Yeah.
Yeah, by and large, I like to think of myself as not a disagreeable person. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but occasionally you'd get clients at the store who were just grumpy and try and take it out on you. Or in a paper ad, you get somebody who try and cheat the paper boy out of his 35 cents a week there. So I've never been a particularly confrontational person, but I don't mind calling out BS when I see it. I learned that my experience is bullies don't take pushback very well.
Right.
So if somebody is impolite or nasty to me, I don't have any problem calling that out. I'm not aggressive.
But you certainly were in position, especially in the military, a great deal of authority.
Yeah, that's interesting. People think there's more than there is. Most of the authority, for good military units, most of the authority really comes from a moral authority.
Oh.
Your people trust you and they believe you're doing the right thing and you're going to guide them right. That's what, at the end of the day, you could put somebody in jail or you could transfer somebody, that sort of stuff. But it's really much more of a teamwork atmosphere.
Okay.
I was luckier than most. Almost every senior leader I had as I went through the military were just really good mentors who were very well grounded. I learned it. I learned about the time I hit mid-career when I got to be a major. I figured that's really your most important job. I spent the rest of my career figuring who are the people 2 generations behind me in this outfit that'll probably be sitting in my chair at some point. And so what can I do to help them get ready to do that?
Okay.
And that's really where I spent most of my energies doing that. I cannot tell you how satisfied it is.
Huh.
There's an organization called the AUSA, the Association of the U.S. Army.
Okay.
It's an affiliation of active duty, retired people that do business in the military. They have a big family reunion in Washington, D.C. every year. Like 6,000-7,000 people show up for this thing. It's runs for about a week. I got in the habit, I would go to this thing, to the big exhibit hall area, and just stand around for a little while. And inevitably somebody would come up and said, "You may not remember me, but I worked for you 20 years ago. I did everything you did and it all worked."
Wow.
Can't get any better than that.
Wow.
That's what it's all about. That was good stuff. So yeah, it's very much a people-centered kind of business. The hardware and the electronics and explosives are all just tools. It's really about teamwork.
Yeah, the military career sounds like it was really satisfying.
Yeah, it really was. I had no intention of doing that. There's no history of that in my family. My brother was in World War II in the Navy. I had a grandfather who was in the Civil War. That one guy I mentioned back in the road, but really no history of it. I just went in to earn the GI Bill and test myself a little bit, and found out A, I wasn't too bad at it, and B, I really liked the people who were good at it.
Okay.
So I sort of did a year at a time for 30 years.
What about off time? Are there things you really enjoyed doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one reason I'm living here,
Okay.
I really like the outdoors.
Okay.
I get antsy indoors after a while. I love hiking. I just like going for long walks with the dog.
Yeah.
I really like individual stuff, but I like some community team things. One of the great things here, I've been on the Habitat team since I've been
Oh,
here.
you did?
It's terrific. It's just great. I mean, you're building somebody's home, and you're building it with them. You know, the
Yeah.
homeowners for Habitat
Yeah.
all put hours on the team as well. So you're sitting there next to the person who's going to live in this house. How good is that?
You worked, I suppose, with Bill Durant?
I'm sorry?
You
Oh,
worked
yeah,
with
yeah,
Bill-
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Bill recruited us all. He was the guy when I got here.
Huh.
He's built something like 35 houses,
Oh,
I think.
It's amazing.
I was feeling, I've built like 7. Bill's done 30 something, almost 40, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really quite a
Huh.
guy. Very inspirational.
Okay.
But yeah, I like things that give me outdoors. I like things that give me a little quiet time to do some thinking. And I like things that accomplish something. So the Habitat thing is good.
Yeah.
Haven't done hardly much here, but I really like things in the wood shop. Can't tell you how many tools I parted with when I moved up here. That was the hard part.
Yeah.
I knew I'd just never use them again.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
I'm an easily amused guy. I spend a lot of time reading.
Okay.
My wife is convinced my computer's going to get fused to my forehead one of these days here.
Well, you spent a lot of time on a computer, couldn't you?
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, I really did. To me, for all the problems with the internet, it's just an amazing thing when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the world is at your disposal. You just have to ask the questions and do the digging. It's all there. It's just
Right.
really remarkable
Right.
stuff.
Well, you mentioned both the church Unitarians,
Yes,
Yeah.
huh?
that and the military, but what kind of organizations within those? I mean, just tell me what kind of things you get involved in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
Groups.
an interesting footnote on the Unitarian thing. I was raised a Presbyterian.
Okay.
Meg's family started a Unitarian church in Charlotte, so
Uh-huh.
that's where she went on Sundays. I thought, it's another hour with my new girlfriend. I can go do that.
I
So,
gotta go too.
I
right?
tell you, lust drove me to the Unitarians. What can I say here?
Well, whatever it takes. Right?
Yeah, but literally, I went the first Sunday. I thought, holy smokes, where has this been? This is great.
Okay.
It's a bunch of curious minds
Yeah.
who think the journey is every bit as important as the destination.
Right.
So I picked up on that early. So we've always been fairly active. Gosh, I've been on UU boards about 4 times. That's an interesting side career. I probably should mention. After I retired from the Army, I went to work for L3 Communications Corporation. They had a division that did leadership training and development. We did a lot of work in foreign countries for the State Department. New democracies, trying to help them figure out, you have law enforcement, you have military, you have a Congress, you have an executive. How do all these guys work together?
Mm-hmm.
This is before the Trump administration. I wouldn't dare do that now. But anyway, so that's been a lot of my time. But once we quit moving around, we got very involved in our congregation
Sure.
there.
Okay.
And right after we got there, they decided to do a capital campaign. They hadn't done one in about 20 years. This is no exaggeration, true story. I was a new guy, and somebody said, "We need some new blood. Would you help us? Would you be part of the committee for this?" I said, "Sure." Went to the first meeting, went to the men's room, came back and found out I'd been elected chair of the new committee.
Watch out.
Yeah, that's right. But I knew our national association had a team of advisors for this. So I said, look, we're getting ready to spend $2 or $3 million here. Before we do that, I want some professional help. If you guys agree I can bring this team down, I'll do that. Well, what we found out was our whole concept of stewardship and giving and how all that works was not very solid. People were shy about talking about money, and
Yeah.
they didn't connect it with the values and all that. And the team that came down to help us said, don't do a building project. Get your foundation and your discussions right first. Spend a couple years do that, then take a look at it. It was such a good experience. I thought, when I retire from this corporate job, that's what I want to do. So I spent a couple years training in that sort of process, and then did that for about 3 years. The UUA decided to shut down that operation, and 3 of us started a consulting firm that I ran for about 5 years doing that. We'd work with congregations on leadership development, capital campaigns, organizational efficiency, that sort of stuff.
Huh.
Wonderful experience. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Are there military reunions, or is that something that you've really kept in touch with?
No, I just never have. You know,
Okay.
I think I went to one. I figured, you know, it's funny. I think an important skill in life is to be able to turn the page. I mean, I love stuff. I have great memories. I have fond memories of people, and we contact occasionally. But I've never been a professional veteran, or I'm always in that. That was then. This is now. Move on.
Now, this next chapter, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Nothing wrong with the old stuff, but turn it loose. You got other things to do. Go learn something new here.
Yeah.
So,
Here's the question about music.
yeah.
Do you have do you have any kind of music that you really loved? And
You've been reading my blog, haven't you? I do a blog once a week. I was twice a week. I got lazy in my old age here. Call it Agents of Reason.
Okay.
And I did one a couple years ago about my playlist on my phone. Good luck trying to figure out what my musical genre is. I like a lot of everything. The only thing I didn't care for was the broad category of country. And then I moved here and discovered Appalachian music.
yes,
Didn't know the difference before.
and there is a difference.
Oh yeah, I've probably got a couple dozen of those. So I've always loved classical music. In spite of all the jokes, I think a lot of new age music is great. I like jazz. Meg loves jazz. I'm not much on show tunes, that kind of stuff. But there's not much music I don't like. We go to a lot of the concerts here. I think music's a real. I have no skills. My musical experience, I had a 1-year assignment at the Pentagon, and I started up a kazoo band. We would show up uninvited at ceremonies and offer to play. So, I can't read music, but I'm always interested that music's a very powerful thing.
Uh-huh.
It helps people in a lot of ways. It connects people that wouldn't otherwise connect. It's really very, very special stuff. So you name it, I probably got a couple of them on my phone.
Okay.
I like them all.
All right. If you were to look back and say, who was the person or persons that were the greatest influence for you in terms of kind of shaping your life?
Boy, you talk about all those mentors. It's a pretty long list here, actually. I mean, I'd actually start with Ms. Orr. I had probably 2 other teachers through school. I think the thing they all had, and then all the military mentors I talked about, they all led by example. They were all good at reading a room and figuring out what people need. The best leaders I had really did have that skill. I mentioned Ms. Orr. I had a military guy that I was an operations officer for. And I'd been there about 6 months before I arrived. He had about 7 companies that were in that unit. I came back later and commanded that unit. It was really kind of a nice deja vu thing. But I realized as his operations chief, I went with him as we went to all the units. He was true to his own core, his own principles, but the way he interacted with each commander was completely different.
Interesting.
He had figured out what they needed.
Right.
That's what he. At one point, I quit being the operations guy, and I took command of one of those companies, and we had 2 companies that were next door to each other, exactly alike. My counterpart next needed to talk to the boss every day. He just kind of needed that he was a great commander. I thought that was an odd, but that's what he needed, and that's what Mitch gave him. When I took the company, Mitch gave me the flag. I said, "I'll see you in 2 years." He said, "Okay." Whatever you needed, he could do that to help you bring out your best here. I just thought, boy, that's a good lesson learning. And I think all the people I admired, they were all curious. There's that word again here. They all worked well with different people, and they all figured out what everybody needed to be their best.
Right.
I think every one of them, as I go with the mental image of the names, they all had those traits. Yeah.
Huh.
I was a lucky guy. I
That was
literally didn't have a bad commander the whole time I was in the military.
Wow.
Some were better than others, but none of them were just terrible. None of them were dictatorial. They were good at managing people, and they all set good examples. They all led from the front. So
Yeah.
good people.
Okay. Obstacles you've had to overcome.
Jeez. Not enough time.
Not enough time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every night, I'm like anybody else, I enjoyed a good night's sleep, but I kept thinking, if I didn't have to give 6 hours to this, what could I do with this? It's gotten to be a joke in the family. I'll wake up. The dog and I are on a 5 o'clock schedule. We get it. You too? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
If the sun's up, I feel like I've overslept.
Yeah.
But I'll sometimes wake up at 3 in the morning, and I swear I'll think, what have they been doing when I was asleep? And if I'm not careful, I'll reach for the phone to get a news update, and I'm gone. Now I've had 3 hours sleep here. That's probably I feel like I don't have enough time to do everything I want to do, and so I have to be careful not to overbook myself, to do too many. I don't want to do a lot of things poorly.
Right.
So part of getting aging is learning to understand there are probably some capacities not as great as they were.
Yeah.
Some are greater than they were, but my phrase is your life has a center line. You can do a little more or a little less, but this is your comfort zone. Knowing where that center line is physically and mentally, you got to pay attention. As you age, that center line is going to change a little bit.
Right.
So you just got to pay attention to do that. So I'm a little impatient with myself. I get irritated if I don't do something really well. So
Yeah.
Bill, what is something you wish you had done but you haven't done?
oh, this is going to sound fallacious, but I did all that military parachuting. Probably would have been fun to do a little sport parachuting. It's a completely different kind of experience here. Other than that, that's just a small sort of entertainment value thing. I honestly can't. If I had my life to do over, I don't think I'd do much differently. I really don't. I had a lot of good luck, made a couple of good choices, picked a perfect partner. We talk about this every year on our anniversary. I thought, if we had to do it over again, we'd probably do everything. But I
would be able to say that.
I wouldn't we got married at 19. Guys, it's a funny short story. My first unit, when I went to the 101st, I was commanding a new platoon that was getting formed up. And my new platoon sergeant, we got there the same week. We got everybody's personnel records, and we're sitting there with a 6-pack of beer, going through the records, seeing who we got. When you form a new unit, some people come in as fresh recruits. Other units give up a couple people. They tend not to give up their best. So you want to look at the records carefully and see who you're. Oh, it's my chance to get rid of Smith here. Let's do that.
I'm gonna hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going through the records, and he stops and he says, "Did you know you're the second youngest person in the platoon?" I said, "Why don't you and I keep that our secret?" He said, "Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's do that." So yeah, it's been a long run. I got a chance to grow up kind of early here, and
Yeah.
worked out well.
Yeah.
I've always thought, I've kind of enjoyed aging. I mean, now I'm coming to a point where I'm going to have to start facing some physical things here. But gosh, I look at somebody in their 20s and their 30s, like, God, it's astounding what you don't know and haven't experienced yet. You got a good run coming ahead. So, as long as my health holds out, this is a good stage. To me, this is the pay it forward stage. I got some time. I'm reasonably comfortable financial. I'm trying to pick things that make the world a little better. That's why I got involved in the Rotary Club here. Jeez.
Okay.
It's just, that's kind of a full-time job in Rotary. You're looking for ways to help people out here.
That's right. That's right.
It's a good time of life.
Observations about how things have changed in terms of the world around.
Oh, goodness.
What are you aware of? And
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that?
Well, interesting. I think we all tend to feel more panicky, for lack of a better term, in our current environment, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, China and Taiwan. The economy's had some ups and downs. I'm sorry, we have a crazy right-wing, white nationalist, Christian militant.
Today's blog.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Some of that was in today's blog. So I mean, all that stuff is extremely worrisome. I'm gonna give you a three-part answer. That's one. So there's a lot of stuff that we legitimately have worry about. I'm afraid we've crossed the Rubicon on the environment. We're going to pay some terrible prices. Things could get better, but they're going to get worse before they get better, and they may not get better. On the other hand, we tend to be captured by the bubble we live in. If you look back at the Great Depression, the Civil War, the Black Plague, worse times have existed, and civilization managed to pull through. So you got to put things in perspective. I think we can get there. The thing that worries me the most now is we have a lot of destructive power we didn't have before with nukes and that sort of stuff. And the whole mass communications has not turned out the way anybody hoped it would here, and we haven't solved how to do that. I think the internet and social media is an incredible thing, good and bad. And it didn't grow up like anybody thought, and we haven't solved that one yet. And I think it's a continual irritant in the sore places of civilization.
Yeah.
Worries me a lot.
Yeah,
Really
what a
does.
mixed blessing, huh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it does. I'm still on Facebook. I find it very useful here. I quit Twitter when he put Trump back on. Said that's it. I had 3 different Twitter accounts. I canceled them all. Yeah, I'm sure that caught Elon Musk's attention here. But yeah, so very much a two-edged sword. I think it still has great potential, but and some smart people working on it. I do a lot of reading in the area, but we certainly haven't cracked that nut yet.
Yeah. There's a question about values that your community taught and that you've really been taught sort of intentionally or unintentionally.
Yeah.
I know you talked about curiosity. Would there be any other values that kind of jump out?
Yeah, I mean, the curiosity really is, and part of the curiosity is you're foolish if you don't have a certain amount of humility.
Okay.
Yeah, you just got to understand. I may or may not be quite as smart as I think I am. I've had a lot of people teach me that if you disagree with somebody, count to 10 before you speak out. This is a better angel sort of thing. If you can find something to agree on, that's a helpful thing to do. So, so the idea, respect other people you disagree with. Be curious about what's going on out there. I think we sort of lost the balance as a society here, saying it's important to stand up for your values, but it's important not to be too rigid about them. In the sense that, there are things I think important that I'll stand up for, but it's okay with me if you have different values as long as it doesn't hurt somebody else. The idea of I don't like the following 100 books and I want them banned out of the school library. That's not what I fought for 30 years to defend.
For somebody who values curiosity, that's probably not the,
come on. Yeah, this is a democracy. Hopefully, still is. We're hanging in here. It's funny. The older I get, the more libertarian I get in the sense of. I'm a Democrat with a capital D, and I was precinct chair in this part of Asheville for a while here. So that's kind of where I sit here. But libertarian in the sense of you got people now saying we think parents ought to write the school curriculum. Really? That's the dumbest thing I've heard all day. That's not a good idea. You may well want to look at the curriculum and exempt your kid from something. That's your choice here. But saying, I have this set of very narrowly and precisely defined values, and society needs to run by that, seems to me a foolish thing to do. My mother, was not afraid of speaking up if she thought somebody was wrong about something or tried and impose themselves on somebody else. So I grew up thinking that it's an important thing to do. Mary will tell you, I'll hear somebody say something really offensive in a grocery line. I'll speak up. She'll go take the groceries to another line. I'm having this conversation here. But I think it's important to be open-minded, try to be reasonable, but to speak up when something that seems wrong. I mean, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
If it's not your responsibility, whose it is? So it's, not looking to pick a fight, but call out stuff when you hear it here. I enjoy doing that now. I'm an old cranky. I'm one year away from get off my lawn, so I'll just do it on more important stuff.
Okay. as you look back, were there some specific kind of historical events that you got involved in, or that really shaped your life?
Yeah, well, gosh, let me think about that for a second. That I got involved in. Yeah, probably a formative thing. I mentioned as a young lieutenant, I went to Vietnam with the platoon. We got there about 2 months before the Tet Offensive in '67 broke out.
Yeah.
I mean, I had deployed a platoon, took a job, and I was a company XO for a while, and had just gotten a rifle platoon, which is what I was really looking for.
Yeah.
About 5 days before Tet, I was still learning the name of my soldiers. Boy, we got a call about 5 in the morning. We all ran out to helicopters, and they gave us 3 sets of maps. And they said, "We're not sure where you're going yet. We'll radio the pilot, and he'll tell you which set of maps counts here." There were so many fights going on. So it led to about a month-long conflict. It was really a formative thing for me.
Yeah.
It just taught me, what's important here. You got to train your people and teach them how to. If there's no guidance, they got to be able to figure it out, stay together as a team. If they get isolated, they got to survive themselves and get back to everybody. It was a very formative period. It just brought lessons I carried with me the rest of my life.
For people your age,
Yeah.
That was as you said, a formative experience.
Yeah. No, it really
Even if you weren't in the military, it was major.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. Well, it was a formative time for our country and for our generations.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah.
everybody had different experiences during that time, but they were all important. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. A lot of the reactionary stuff now, I think, are people who grew up in that period and felt left out or didn't like what they saw here, and
Right.
now they're trying to correct it 60 years later. Good luck.
Okay. Satisfaction. What have you found a great deal of satisfaction in? What kind of things are you really proud of?
Oh, jeez. How much tape you got here? Well, I mentioned earlier the business of mentoring people, and it works out well.
Yeah.
Is just a huge thing. I sort of translated that into the little consulting business I had. Churches and nonprofits don't call for help until they're going down for the third count.
Okay.
People in trouble. I got a lot of satisfaction out of being able to say, generally, this is fixable. We can do this.
Right.
So the idea of mentoring, the idea of helping organizations that can be helped and are willing to trust you to do that. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. I get a lot of personal tactile satisfaction out of things like working with wood. I still do a lot of yard work out here. It's just kind of a time and a place to clear your head and do something manual here. I'd mentioned quiet time out in the woods is just extraordinary satisfaction. But starting projects or taking things and seeing them through and leaving something better than you found it, great satisfaction. I had the shows you how bad people's judgment is. The first year I was on the resident council here, I got elected chair. You normally don't do that the second year.
Good Lord.
Don't have it happen. 4 months later, the pandemic hit. So I spent 2 years around the council during the pandemic here. But it was very satisfying in the sense that people were just really scared. And I knew we had a great staff here. We were all learning about the COVID, but it became obvious before too long, if we're not stupid and we do some good things, we'll get through this. Okay? And for me, it was interesting. I don't. How long have you lived in the reservation here?
A year and a half.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you missed all that
Yeah,
fun here.
Yeah.
It was interesting to me, Tom. I don't know what your experience was. Everybody sort of got scared, and then we just day by day figured it out. Your partner here, Tom, was one of the guys who helped a lot. One of the first things I said was, "There's this thing called Zoom. Go buy 2 copies of it. We're going to use that to get," because I'd used it in my business. And Tom was one of our trainers, showed people how to run a Zoom thing here. And I remember toward the end of that time, we had a resident meeting. I said, "Here was the calendar of the first week after the pandemic was declared. It was 2 pages of blank. It had one line that said all events are canceled. Here's the one a year and a half later. It ran 3 pages.
Yeah.
We had figured out together how to do everything.
Yeah.
So it was very satisfying. I kind of like problems if
Right.
you can either solve them, or I don't have any problem saying this is not solvable. I was involved in aircraft accident investigations for a while, And very often what we would find in a military unit, it was something in the command structure that had undermined safety. People felt too much pressure to perform, or safety shortcuts were there. And I used to have a slogan. I'd brief a commander. I'd say, I have two pieces of bad news. Your baby's ugly, and it looks like you. So as a consultant, I did some of that in a much more gentle fashion here. But yeah, helping people figure out what's not working right and how you can be, even an outfit that's doing well.
Yeah.
We can all do better. It's kind of refreshing being able to come in and say, I've seen this in about 20 other places. Let me just share with you some things we might try that might fit here.
Right.
Very satisfying stuff to do. So I tried to do some of that in the council I was here this year. So what I'm doing, I'll be president of the Rotary Club next year. So I'm setting that process in motion now, getting new people to take committees and that sort of stuff.
Okay. Let's go back to you talking about being in Vietnam.
Yeah.
You certainly were aware of a lot of the protests.
Oh, sure,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
What was that like for you to be
Yeah.
to
It's
be in the Army and yet know all this other stuff?
It's a question I hear a lot. If I had been a draftee, I think that would have been tougher. I made a decision fairly early on that I thought the work was important as an institution, and so I declared myself a professional soldier. I was an officer, and that meant when I got lawful orders, I was going to follow them.
Okay.
I have worked subsequently. Remember I said I worked for L3 Communications. I spent a lot of time in countries where the Army decided what it was going to do.
Right.
You don't want to go there. So part of that contract you sign up with as a professional soldier is, I may get a war I don't like. I have a government for that. My job is to vote and try to get that changed. But in the meantime, as long as it's legal, I do that. So to me, there was a bit of separation. I got the issues.
Gotcha.
Not a problem. That's okay. I'd be disappointed if people didn't get engaged one way or the other. So didn't have to agree with it, but it's okay. My job was, I took 43 guys over. My job was to see how many I can get back. I got 40 back. I didn't lose many. I kept that command for 10 months, longer than I was the last guy to get. I refused to give it up. They finally said, you have to go do something else. Let somebody else have the platoon here. So, I'm very comfortable with people protesting on something that I have. That's okay.
Right.
We'll work that out. I didn't take it personally. It was just I had signed up to do this, and I thought it was important that the institution respond to authority. If we don't like it, let's change the government.
Gotcha.
That's fine.
Gotcha. Okay. What about another major thing for you and me at our
at our general age?
Yeah.
Yes.
The whole civil rights thing. What thoughts about that?
It's interesting. We've been to several of the notable civil rights museums and memorial sites here. If you had told me in 2023 we'd still be this far behind in solving this problem, I said, "Oh no, surely we'll do better than that by now." That's a discouraging. The courage of the people who led the civil rights movement is just stunning to me. I mean, they face real, honest to God, pressure and physical danger every damn day, and they made it happen. The fact we've got people who are trying to reinvent that history just drives me crazy. Do you remember the one I said, Megan, I did those interviews with people and got their life story?
Yeah.
The couple we were talking to, they were in their 80s at that time. They were a young couple when the civil rights movement was going, and they were sitting in their TV in Virginia one day, and they watched Selma, and she turned to her husband and said, "You got to take care of the kids. I'm going to go stand with those people." Holy smokes.
Wow.
And there were hundreds of people who did that. They just did that. So to me, it was our finest moment. I'm sorry it took so long. It was so tough, and I'm really sorry we're trying to reinvent the damn thing now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get some people. I want to print up a bumper sticker that says, "Damn right, I'm woke. Want to talk about it?"
Now,
but it's just stunning to me that we're reinventing the history. It's just I just can't believe it.
In the military, you must have dealt with issues of integration and prejudice and things like that.
Oh yeah, we did. But I have to tell you, the military reflects the society it comes from, so you get a lot of the same kind of problems.
Right.
But the nature of the work, most of my time was in combat units. Most of that stuff gets filtered out to a large degree, not completely, but to a large degree, because you all depend on each other for your lives.
Right.
It
Right.
gets to be a meritocracy
Interesting.
pretty quickly.
Okay.
Not to say there weren't racial conflicts and racial issues, but it was a lot less than society at large. I mean, you have people who brought prejudice in. Sometimes you had to deal with that, but by and large, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
The interesting one was, I guess, about the 70s, mid 70s. We started bringing women into non-traditional roles. That'd always been the Women's Army Corps, and there were clerks and that sort of thing. And the Army said, we're not going to do that anymore. And I got a call. I was commanding a company in the 25th Infantry Division. And I was posed the question, said, if we wanted to assign 1 or 2 women to your company, would that be a problem? And I said, yeah, it would be. And they said, yeah? I said, yeah. Give me 8 or 10.
Uh-huh.
Don't give me a token. That'll be bad for her, bad for you.
Right.
I got half a dozen right off the bat. 6 months later, everybody's wondering, so what was the problem here?
Yeah.
You just got to do it. It's a very performance-oriented environment, and everybody depends on everybody else.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff, it doesn't go away, but it smooths out a lot. It wasn't too tough.
How are we doing on the questions?
I don't know. How many more we got? Oh, we're about done.
Okay.
We're about done.
Our time's about up. You go ahead and finish.
All right. Okay. Someone would say, your age, white, you're a privileged white man.
Yep. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I came from a really almost poor working class family, but here's the analogy I use to answer that. Imagine life is a marathon, and 2 people are running the same marathon, but one of them has a 50-pound pack on his back and one leg tied to the other.
Right.
And let's talk through. So that's the way it goes for 3 generations.
Yeah.
Okay, now we've stopped the prejudice, and they said, okay, let's forget all that. We all go forward from here. But look at where our start point by a generation is.
Mm-hmm.
The fact I'm a white male American in the 23rd century, I got advantages somebody else never had.
Yeah.
I shouldn't feel guilty about that, but I ought to feel like that needs to be corrected.
Right.
It's not my fault that happened, but I've got some responsibility for the consequences. And to deny that that doesn't exist doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm interested in not having a permanent underclass that's identifiable by race, gender, or anything else. Anything I can do to help get that fixed. But we have yet to figure out how to have a serious conversation, have we, as a country about how to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I really thought we'd be further along. I really did.
Yeah. All right, we need to wrap things up. Anything that I didn't ask? Or?
No, you guys are great. Thank you very much. I appreciate you doing this project.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in seeing this one, but I can't wait to see the rest of them.
Anything else that you would like to add that we haven't asked?
No, I don't think so. Other than, I think you sort of hinted at it. It's interesting within this community to ask, so how's this stage of life? How do you see this stage of life? Like I said, when I got here, I was still working. It took me a couple years to figure out how to retire. But I really celebrate now. This is my time to learn stuff I didn't have time to do and support things I couldn't do. I just really, tell me what you think your life is about at this stage in your life. What's different, what's better, or what's worse? Interesting thing. I mean, we all have conversations around that, but I'd be interested to see what kind of common thread pops up for everybody. Yeah. But thank you guys for doing
this.
this.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm going to turn